the stiff truth.
Well, cheers. Cheers, everybody. Bob. Hey, Bob.
That's to prosperity and high crypto and stocks.
Crypto.com. The Crypto.com Center. Check it out, folks. That is a tasty beverage. Welcome to the Stiff Truth. I'm Scott. This is Bob. Bob, you look fantastic today. How you doing?
I feel fantastic today. Other than, the anguish of the Cowboys shitting the bed. But other than that, I feel good.
It was a tough loss, dude.
I was talking to Jess the other day about drink toast, right? And she said, you know that drink toast are a form of white magic? And I was like, what? And she's like, well, it actually goes way back, like before Christ and Christianity and all that. People would drink their positive wishes and ambitions and trying to, make it physical and then manifest it. And I was just like, that's an interesting thing. So that's why I when you said let's toast, then I naturally said, okay, we're going to toast the high cryptos and stocks.
Well, that makes sense too. And it also makes sense that it's white magic too. And you would just basically like toast to your privilege. You know what I mean? That all makes sense. You know what I mean? So that's interesting.
100%.
Not a bad beverage though today. I'll tell you what. It's not fancy, Bob, but I do enjoy a gin and tonic. And we were talking about it earlier. I have a newfound respect, even though I still don't know the details because I haven't looked up what tonic is used for. But I know historically, Bob, that it was used as an assistance in administering some kind of important medications. Look this up, Bob, if you can, because I think this is important stuff versus flavored seltzer water or something just completely remedial like that. Tonic is pretty hardcore. So we got to give it some props here. It's not just a fun mixer for a gin and tonic and other sorts. Okay. So there's that. And I'm enjoying it, my friend.
So I'm going to go over a brief history of tonic water that I found on dndwithlens.com.
This is exactly what we prepared for.
It's not D&D, it's dandywithlens.com.
Oh, I thought this was Dungeons and Dragons.com.
I know. So the history of tonic water. Tonic water was first made by British soldiers in East India in the early 19th century as a way to consume quinine, which was used against malaria. Quinine has an extremely bitter flavor. The Brits mixed it with soda and water in order to reduce the bitterness. The mix was still too bitter to be enjoyed. Being British, they solved this by adding gin. Without knowing it, the British Army had created what may be the world's most famous and easy to make cocktail. The first commercial production was done in 1858 by Erasmus Bond. 20 years later, Jacob Schwepp, that name may sound familiar from the famous tonic water, started to produce what we know today as Schweppes Indian Tonic.
Wow. The more you fucking know, and the NBC rainbow goes across the screen there, the peacock rainbow. Oh my God. See, I knew it. I told you, Bob. You didn't believe me. I saw the disbelief earlier, but I was right. Tonic saved the world. Can we just say that, or is that an overstatement?
So it helped from malaria, at least. That's good.
It's a large portion of the world at a certain time had those kind of problems.
Only a Brit would be like, this is really bitter. Grab some of that booze.
Right. It's like, maybe, you know what? Maybe that was the magic. Maybe that was the magic with getting more people to take it. Cause they're like, you know what? We got like a nasty malaria here. A lot of people are dying, getting sick or whatever. They don't want to take the medicine because it tastes like shit. It's like, so maybe if we throw gin in there, they're going to get trashed, and we just tell everybody, hey, have some cocktails. They're a little funky, but trust me, you're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel here. You're going to get fucked up.
I'd take ivermectin if it was in a fucking cocktail.
Do you see what I'm saying here? Maybe we have something going here. There's a lot of vaccine hesitance to be like, no, dude, this shit is the bomb. Packs a wicked punch, bro. So get in there, get the jab, and you're going to get super fucked up. I'm just saying, maybe it's something we can look at. You're like, come get your COVID booster and also get these shooters of, what is it?
Yeah,
Bombay?
If they gave you a
Sapphire.
cocktail, like if it was like a cocktail lounge while you got your COVID booster, many more people would go get it.
Honestly, Bob, I would have got my 4th or 5th booster now if that was the case. So you know what I mean? There is that.
Like, welcome to the COVID booster.
Can I take your order,
Line. Yeah,
please?
can I get you a beverage? We've got JD and Coke. We've got gin and tonic. Like, what do you want
Hold
back
on.
there?
I see some Macallan over there that 18 year. If you want to grab me that, you want to grab me the Pfizer booster, the booster. Yeah, no, the second version. That'd be
I'd
great.
like a 12-year Macallan and a 1-year Pfizer. Thanks. Here's a 20.
That's a good year. Give me the 2021 Moderna. Yeah, I like to live dangerously.
It was a good year.
That's when somebody comes over, instead of like, having you bust the wine open and smell the cork and like, smell the glass and everything, take the sip with the COVID lounge or whatever. They just come over and they like tell you what it is and they cough in your face. Like, oh yeah, that sounds nice. What is that? The Delta strain? That's a good one.
If anyone hasn't figured it out, we're drinking gin and tonics. Honestly, just a bunch of gin and tonic water. The deal is, I like it with the twist. I believe you do too, since you have lime in yours. So always a twist of lime and then a little bit extra, just to throw in there for me to keep it going. But
does mine kind of look like a butt? Is that like kind of
a little bit, like a nice round one, like someone's bending over it. Even has a hole in the middle.
Ooh,
very odd what's going on there. But you can also make this drink with vodka. Some people don't like the kind of dry bitterness of gin, and they prefer the alcohol, nasty potato booze of vodka. And so you can substitute and have a vodka tonic. I think gin goes better with my tonics myself.
Can I come in right here and just say, both you and I'm apologizing for us again. I think we've done this before on the show, but if people are old school stiffies and everything, they know that originally when we did a show about our favorite drinks, gin was right there at the bottom. I again want to apologize for you and I for how we just kind of did gin dirty when it's actually pretty damn good. That's all I got to say. I really want to highlight how great gin is.
Sorry, Ryan Reynolds. You really made us take a second look.
Well, I mean, doesn't Ryan Reynolds
and a fourth look?
There we go. It's like, doesn't he always? That gorgeous bastard. Oh my. But Bob, sorry about the football team, man. That was no, excuse me. The football team did a good job. We won today, but sorry about your football team.
That's okay. They're only halfway through the season and they literally have a whole season's worth of wins already. We're in a good spot.
You know what? I like how you keep perspective there, because that's the perspective you have to have. I mean, for an NFC team right now, you guys are like, you guys have a winning end of the year record now midway through the season. So good on you. I'll tell you what though. I was telling you about this the other day, and this is my smooth transition to our topic today. But I'm really thinking now is the time to invest in meta platforms, formerly known as Facebook. I will tell you this too. I never gave Facebook a look-see, even though I got a micro share from one of the stash parties from that platform. But because of the maybe not so recent, but still recent enough, lawsuits they've been in, Instagram recently, especially with them obviously knowing about the detriment that happens to adolescents, especially, and a lot of depression and all kinds of things that are going on with just that source of social media in general, like Facebook and Instagram, everything basically they control, and how they just kind of push forward profit over anything kind of deal. It looks like they're doing this as, kind of a hopefully of a, I don't want to say a smokescreen rebrand or something like that, but they're trying to redirect, you know what I mean? Rightfully so. This is obviously Facebook and Instagram is not the end game for Zucky baby. You know what I'm saying? But that brought up an interesting conversation between you and I that we've obviously gone down a rabbit hole, and it's very, very interesting. I would say Matrix level interesting, with a paradigm shift that it can do to our perception of what is reality. But first and foremost here, what do you think about the investing truth here of what's going on with meta platforms and what you see in the future, buddy?
There's a few different people that are building one right now, right? Because it's about who launches it first, who has the best one, and attracts the most people, gets the most traction. Whoever does that first gets the golden key, and then everyone will be forced to fall in line, right, and join that platform. That's why, obviously, Zucky Baby's trying to be the first one to do it. There's also I forget the company. I just read the article though. There's another, a venture capitalist group that has $500 million that's raised. They're also trying to create a metaverse. They're trying to create like a basically a like an open sourced metaverse.
Well, that's what you want. I think that's how you get the most buy-in. I mean, you can make your money other ways, obviously. Doesn't need to be all through advertising. But so are you saying that what Facebook is doing, excuse me, Meta platforms is not open source then? They want to charge like a membership fee?
No, I don't know. I haven't seen their fee structure, but obviously it's for profit. Right.
Okay.
There are
let's back
companies
up.
that are trying to make, I guess, less profit off of it than Facebook.
Let's back up a little bit here, because I think we're going to start getting into it too much until we I think we may need to lay the groundwork a little bit here. For myself included, but I feel like I have my foot in the water a little bit more here. When we talk about meta universe, just that whole concept in general, it's safe to say that there's already a large element out there that's present, that's more in the infancy of what it can be, right? But give us a little bit of clarity here on what this is, for especially for the stiff audience out there that maybe is not too savvy.
What we're really talking about here is a virtual world. It reminds me of the famous line from the Cable Guy, right? You can play Mortal Kombat with a friend in Vietnam, right? With the internet, he's talking about, and you can, and that's great. But with the metaverse, you can play Mortal Kombat like in a person on the same couch with your friend in Vietnam.
Why you're jacking off your friend in Vietnam and he can feel it, right? Right. Seriously.
So imagine a world where you put your virtual, reality goggles on, and you're sitting there, and you're now in your virtual house, right? And so I call you. I'm in my virtual house. I'm like, hey, I'm in my virtual house. Come over. I'm drinking cocktails over here, and I'm gonna watch the game. And you just like show up instantly on my couch with your avatar, and now we're gonna watch the game in 4K together. We're watching the game behind my virtual couch where you and I are sitting watching the game. There sits an art piece that I actually made out of digital art, right? And it's pixelated or whatever, but then I backed it up with like a half an Ethereum token. So it's an NFT and it has value and it's unique, right? And that thing's worth like, 10 G's up there. And it's up for auction right now. And, people are bidding to get this crypto NFT, this crypto art that actually has, tangible value to something, especially with a token that has utility, right? So you have like NFTs hanging in your house, or you might have a custom vase or something in your room that's actually like art, like legit, like an NFT art, so you have these things in your house that are actually value, maybe even more value than you have in your real house. You can have now VR family reunions where hundreds of your family can get together with their avatars and talk and catch up and do all this while no one had to pay for a single flight or pretend they like someone souffle. You know what I mean? So
in essence, though, again, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page here, a metaverse, whatever, is essentially a realistic virtual reality like landscape, that a platform, so to speak, right? That people can interact long distance, short distance, interchangeably, doesn't matter, but it goes further than that a little bit, right? But okay.
So we're not just talking about like, oh, cool, Scott's in my virtual living room. Well, why don't you just hang out in your real living room, or like use the phone or FaceTime or hit each other up on Amazon, right? Oh, that's because here in a second at halftime, me and Scott are going to go to this other virtual world that's like where we fly as superheroes and we fucking, save the galaxy and all of this together. And you can transform it into something simple like that, into just a limitless, unchained virtual environment that you can bend to your liking.
Perfect. And what Bob is referring to there is something that me and Bob call Ace and Gary world. That's actually what that is when we go fly like superheroes.
That's true. The ambiguously gay duo.
I'm glad you picked up on that right away. You
So-
had to. I knew you did.
And the thing about it is,
Sorry.
I think one of the good examples that really opened up, and that's why I encouraged you to read the book and to watch the movie, was a book, Ready Player One. And then I think that kind of takes you from baby steps and puts you into the world, and to see how it can be capitalized and corporately controlled, and see the angle of the corporate interest and why it be so such an investment for corporations, and why they'd want to have that sort of control, obviously, because they would then control all of your media consumption, all of it, not just the website you were on or the channel that you watched. They would literally control your path to that information as well.
Can I challenge you real quick here? Not, and I think we may have to do multiple parts on this topic in general. I think there's a lot of things when, as you were saying, as I was, again, I treated it a lot like how my mind unlocked and started wandering for more understanding and reason of something like the Matrix. You know what I mean? When you start thinking like, wow, oh yeah, this is completely feasible too, like right now. And some of the things that you see in Ready Player One are maybe 1 to 5 years off. Maybe if we're not trying hard or don't have, top secret military technology or something like that. But it's a very interesting concept that I see a dramatic amount of positives and just things that could change the world in a good way. And then obviously some dangers, but I think far outweigh are the positives here. But yeah, no, it's a very interesting concept in general. And I think one of the major things for me that I was listening to is how you can learn at a whole nother level, dude. I think it was in Ready Player One where he was talking about doing history in school. And he's like, yeah, yesterday or last week we were in, 1300 BC, like listening to King Tut, like talk about like whatever, like basically like was there interacting like as like a live experience of history. Right. And then we were here like, 1,000 years later, at this period in the 1920s when they were doing excavations on the King Tut, like, graves, in the pyramids and all that shit. I was like, wow, how cool is the potential here on how much people could learn and how much more impactful lessons would be if you could put them in these hardcore, like, I want to say something besides virtual reality, like environments, but essentially that's what they are. But again, just like taking that and running with that, you're like, oh my God, like this could hands down just enhance the way people like educate themselves and get an understanding and actually feel like things that they're supposed to be learning, rather than just reading them out of a textbook or listening to a stupid movie when they wheel in the cart with the fucking old school, TV on them and shit like that. Like that to me was like, wow, I could literally go on this track for a long, long time and be like, wow, this is dynamic. That's just one instance. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're 100% right. And with that comes inherent dangers as well. Yeah. That are exponentially greater than they are now. We've already seen, the GRU Russian social media shit that's been going on, and all the bots that have been going on. So like, it's more than just everyone thinks cyber hacking, but there's also like culture hacking. And we have, hostile countries like China and North Korea and Russia that are actually trying to infiltrate our social media and bend our culture, to kind of suit their needs or to cause discord amongst our citizens, right? Imagine that kind of environment that was in a VR situation like that. So if we have CNN and Fox, say, slanting off the left and the right and kind of doing their thing with that, imagine what happens when someone comes in and starts feeding misinformation that's that powerful. That's that immersive. And it's hard to tell what's real or not on the internet now. You have to put in a lot of work to actually research the bullshit when you see something that looks on the surface pretty credible, right? But then you have to do your diligence. But imagine what that experience is so immersive and vivid and clear when you experience it. So I think there's a lot of inherent dangers that are going to come along with that. That's going to be really hard to mitigate with this metaverse going forward, because we can't really get a handle on it now.
No, and it's interesting too, because now you, and something you said a little while ago too, that I was like, well, I wanted to highlight is like, we have now, we think is multiple different sources telling us news and telling us influence or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're probably owned all by the same small group of people anyways,
Perhaps, yeah.
right? Yeah. And they just have different facades and different like fronts, so to speak. Right. Very interesting. The one thing that really, really got me in the sense of almost kind of hit me like a pit in my stomach is like, wow. And I say this because again, when you look at science fiction in general, the key word the key word that I focus on, the key idea that keeps it kind of as a fantasy is the fiction part, right? Like this is far-fetched. There's a little bit something out of touch here, reality-wise, that just makes this lofty and kind of, whimsical, whatever, right? But the big thing that got me and what we're dealing with right now, and I don't want to be doom and gloom or anything like that, but for something like this, for an alternate reality to not only grab people's attention, but consume their time like entirely makes more and more sense as we creep more and more into the 21st century. I mean, literally, with just how, and this was a big thing with me with Ready Player One too, especially going through the book, is life just fucking sucks. Like it's not just dull and boring, like, say some gothic rich white kid in the suburbs in the 1980s or something like that, but literally, like, not only is it dull and drab and pointless or whatever, but it sucks. Unlimited resources and everything that we enjoyed from like the 50s to the year 2000 are depleting, and also the cause of how we're ruining and potentially going to destroy the world. And those problems are just kind of festering up more and more, and it almost seems like life is like unbearable to a certain extent. And you can see like the trajectory in a lot of sectors on how, if we don't fucking correct things, life is going to keep getting more difficult. Hence the reason more and more people are going to look for an escape and stay in an escape if it gives them a break from the shitty reality that is perpetuating, right? So that to me is like the biggest thing. It's like, how would this actually happen? How could people be consumed by VR, and how could a VR reality become reality to like the world in general? Like, how could that just make a switch? I was like, well, like what we're doing right now definitely happens, right? And you think about people that have have had their kids die while they're like their wife and husband are playing like World of Warcraft for like 27 hours or some shit, and the kid's like drowning in the tub. That's like just a tip of the iceberg. That's like a shitty little precursor cousin to what we're talking about here. So, you know what I mean? I mean, that's a lot of bullshit.
So how about in the movie Ready Player One, when all school districts were in VR?
Yeah.
And it was a publicly funded program to where everyone got a headset, everyone got their haptic gloves, everyone had their own account and everything. We see,
explain to everybody real quick here. Haptic gloves basically is like,
so a haptic,
other two sensories, right? For like, instead of the visual, it's for like the touch and feel kind of perspective of the world, right?
Yeah, so it's a piece of hardware that you put on that actually provides sensory feedback in some sort of form other than just visual, right? So haptic gloves would have touch sensors with pressure points that press down as you grab things to give you a sense of touching things in the VR world. A haptic vest would have things that move and like hit you. Like if you're playing a game and you get shot, you have something like shake in the spot that you got shot, right? You'd have that sensory feedback in a haptic device. And in the book, you're like, oh, that would be cool one day. No, not one day. I actually see ads in my Facebook feed all the time. I just saw one yesterday for a full-on haptic vest. And then the haptic gloves are already being developed right now from Facebook.
Yeah.
So with the Oculus team, I saw them demoed to where he had like your fingers were all controlled, and they had sensory feedback all down your fingers, so that if you ran your finger down, you could feel that in your virtual glove. Which I know the sex trade is like loving the direction that's all going in, but in the rest of the world,
well, dude, think about it. First of all, wouldn't you tell? Hold on. Wouldn't you tell your son, hey man, instead of going getting an STD, you take your fucking haptic glove and you go fucking jerk it in your room and get your release safely? You know what I mean?
Like,
I mean,
what are you doing tonight? think I'm gonna fuck a centaur. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, why not? Get in there. Hey, do what you want to do. Hey, bestiality, totally fine in the VR world. Maybe a little bit strange in general still, but hey, it's okay. It's safe. You can do this. This is a safe place. This is the oasis.
So yeah, and it really is a place. And as far as like business goes, we see a lot of it now in the precursors with the pandemic, especially with all the work from home, all the school from home. We've got schools in New Mexico right now that are starting to lock down again.
We could say this literally, especially from a gaming perspective, myself included. The pandemic was the primer, the kickstart, so to speak, on how this can make sense and get it started, right? Because honestly, if anything's driving this force from a like small kindling fire to catch as a wildfire, it's the gaming society. You know what I mean? They're gonna have to embrace it first more than anybody to make it more socially acceptable in general. And I think the pandemic, like where people would go game with each other or whatever, like in person, I think that all of a sudden now, especially with their personality in general, as a stereotype, is like, no, dude, now I can eat potato chips and drink Code Red Mountain Dew and game forever at my house. It's okay. It's socially acceptable. And I think the rest of the world will jump on board. Yeah. I think right now is kind of the genesis. It's happening.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's happening, and I don't think there's really any stopping it. The point is going to be to limit, overindulgence, right? To maintain like for atrophy, right? Is it going to be like, well, you have to record so much physical activity before you have access to your daily log of VR consumption of this meta consumption. So there could be that. I really don't think it's going to be like all that limited by finances, although I do think it'll be a lot of pay to win stuff to where people will have the distinct advantage if they have more money versus like the free version of whatever, which is, that's how life is anyway.
The one thing that strikes me is the only thing that doesn't need to be explained, and it doesn't need to be propped up by anything on how this could be a reality in general. And no pun intended, but the economics of it, right? Like, especially in how Ready Player One, it's like, okay, it's free, right? It's open source. And I'm talking about the Oasis, right? I like how it became synonymous with the word internet. They were interchangeable.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? After a certain, it just became second nature. And I thought that was cool because I'm kind of going off track here, but with what I was saying, but do you remember back in the 1990s, the internet was a luxury good. It wasn't a utility,
absolutely.
Right? Now look where the internet is. Only 20, 30 years later, it's a utility. If you don't have internet, poor you don't have internet. How do you fucking pay your bills? How do you do this and that, whatever, right? But if you take that again, 20 more, 30 or more years in the future, now the Oasis, what was an online virtual reality game at the beginning, has become a utility and a commodity at the same time. It's crazy how that can like literally leapfrog, every couple of decades and be just the standard, right? The status quo for how we live.
And it could also be the very thing that separates the industrialized nations from the poor nations.
Yeah.
Where they build the haptic gloves and the industrialized people, reap all the benefits of it.
Hey, everybody's got their job. This is why I love capitalism right now. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, God bless everybody in Singapore. Actually, no, Singapore is a great country. But going back to it, the economics of it, again, how it's free, but to do anything and thinking about how we play games, right? Just in general, everything is free. But if you're going to do anything in this badass world, that's an awesome escape from the shitty ass real reality of life and how bad and awful things are and doom and gloom. You go in here, it's perfect. It's like a Nirvana type place or whatever. And you want to make it even better. People are just like doing everything to make themselves look better, to feel better, to appear better, to whatever it is. Right. And that's how you generate and perpetuate just like revenue streams. It's beautiful. There's actually zero need to advertise for people. It's self like fulfilled in the sense that they need to spend money for these things because they're like, it's like human nature shit that they're paying for, which you just pay for.
I have a question. If you could choose like your gaming avatar, what would you choose?
Don't know his name, but like the Egyptian god that has like a dog, like wolf head or whatever, and like a human body
Anubis?
or whatever. Yeah, Anubis. Yeah. That's who it is.
Okay.
I would probably sell myself up with something Anubis-esque looking because I think he's pretty
See,
dope.
I'm thinking like Jesse Ventura in Predator.
Oh,
I'd be like this old school army badass with a cigar and shit.
interesting. Again, that's what I think is really cool about it. And this is one of the things that I think would take hold people. You know what I mean? That would just get them so into it. Is like this if this became, again, if virtual reality became where people innately lived most of their lives, most of their free time was spent in this place, you would spend more time worrying about your appearance, just how people do, in reality right now. Like, honestly, I'm not going to just point out women, but how long do people typically get ready to go see other groups of people? You usually just don't throw on a shirt and fucking run a comb through your hair. Men and women spend hours and weeks and months preparing for their presentation to other human beings in real life. Imagine if that was no more at all, right? And it's literally how your virtual VR avatar looks to other avatars and competing with their limitless now way of attributing themselves and building themselves up, visually and other stimulations. Dude, it's pretty fucking nuts is all I gotta say.
I would say that would drop down a little bit potentially, but also instead of like half a dozen outfits that my wife would try on before we went somewhere, she would just try on like 400 in virtual, just like this one, nope, this one, nope, this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. It'd be tough.
I think it'd still take a minute as she like cruise through stuff for her avatar. But I get you.
I will tell you what, though, just because I have to, one time I would have to just buy the Jessica Rabbit skin and see how that feels to walk around like that chick. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, seriously,
I want you to
we all thought
too,
it.
Scott.
That's walking around like a boss, though, is all I got to say. A different kind of boss, but still nonetheless a boss. But seriously, it's a very interesting concept, bro. There's a lot of different ways I can go here with which is continuing to just expand and extrapolate what I feel about this. Is there's a lot to it, Bob.
Yeah, there's so much potential, and there's so much potential for disaster. And knowing how us humans are, we're gonna end up with the latter, and we're gonna be fighting through the shit constantly. It's not gonna just give us a utopia like the theory suggests, but I think there's a huge benefit to it. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to reduce costs and be more streamlined and effective when communicating and dealing with each other. How sweet would it be for us to do a live show with all of the stiffies actually virtually in the audience, just able to interact and ask a question if they wanted it? You know what I mean? It would just like completely open things up to a way that many people have never thought. And it would open up the creativity and the inventions and the advancement and perspectives of things. And there's a lot of potential of greatness there, but there's also a lot of potential of disaster that we're going to constantly be dealing with.
Let me ask you this. What do you think? And it may be beyond your normal scope as a good-hearted person here. But how do you think this could be like just manipulated and taken advantage of the most? What do you see as the most negative outcome from embracing some kind of shift like this in reality and basically taking everything to an online locked in kind of reality? What do you see as the most?
So I'd see just the human civilization right away, like I said, increasing the distance between the wealthy and the poor in the world, which there's already a huge difference, right? In our own country, there's a huge difference between the top 1% and the rest of the country, right? But the poorest person in America is like one of the wealthier people in some other countries in the world, right? So when you actually start looking at that distribution of wealth globally, because I think this will bring a lot of us together, because I think translators will start getting us to where language is no longer a barrier for the people that are online in this VR world, right? And we'll just have our translators kicked on. It'll be live. We'll understand each other, kind of like Star Trek when they have their translators on. They understand all of the alien languages. But I also think that beyond that disparity of rich and poor globally, I think it's gonna make us much more reliant on the tech. And so if someone comes up with a very good hacking plan, they can really fuck people up and fuck countries up. economically if they disrupt that flow of information and that flow of money, because a lot of people are going to work in there. Like, it's just straight up, you're going to
Yeah.
work in your VR. And I don't think it's going to be these crazy headsets like we see in the movie Ready Player One, or that we have now. I think eventually it's going to be glasses or contacts that you just throw in, or even
They made,
implants that
I
go
was,
as
yeah,
contacts.
I was just going to say like Neuralink, like Elon Musk stuff. You know what I mean? He's already planning on having stuff implanted like in our heads and everything like that. And I think that's the logical next step. I agree with you there. The other thing I think is, I see a couple of things. I think you had mentioned it, the disruption of information. You know what, that's good. That's be detrimental to worlds, to countries, to societies. I also think just being able to massively control the data set of information for everybody could be wildly, wildly dangerous. The other thing I see, and you kind of mentioned it too, excuse me, is I think we could potentially get a couple of generations locked into this and be so sedentary and just outside of our normal human just capabilities that need to be like kind of practiced to keep in general, like almost like de-evolving to a certain perspective, right? And I'd see something potentially happening where again everything is so reliant on this technology where say something happens catastrophic to the world, solar flares, whatever it is, like just fucking knocks out like all electronics all over the world, and then all of a sudden we're like back to caveman, but we can't even protect ourselves as like hunter and gatherers because we're so weak physically and don't have all the attributes that humans have for fight and flight and everything like that you would normally have, because it would be so degraded from being in this like sedentary state of existence for a long time where it was all mind driven versus physical. I see that potentially as another huge thing. You know what I mean?
One of the ways they solve that physical atrophy problem in Ready Player One was that omnidirectional treadmill, right? So everything you actually had to run and walk and do your stuff physically, which like made a great impact. If I had to walk and run everywhere all day long for all of my shit, I'd be in much better shape than I am right now with my sedentary work style and lifestyle that I have, because I'm an IT guy. Just sit down all day in front of the computer, and it's terrible for me. It's terrible for my cortisol levels. It's terrible for my heart. It's terrible for my weight. It's just terrible. But if I had to actually like have a hardware on and walk all over to different appointments, and even walk to like virtual appointments or whatever with fake miles, just to get action before something triggered, I'm sure that there could be something physically that could prevent us from becoming the crew on Wall-E.
Well, here's the thing. I agree with you there. Unfortunately, here's what I see happening. That being maybe the president that set the rules that are set out. And then there's probably some guy that's handicapped that's got billions of dollars that says, but hey, but I can't play. Yeah. But guy, I can't play. And this is not fair. You're being, you're being and then boom, bam, all of a sudden there's special exceptions made for a group of people. And then people just that don't want to walk around and run all the time that are hackers, they get this kind of software too, where all of a sudden that shit is just logged in there where they don't even have to be on the treadmill. They can just kind of make it happen. And then we're in the same position.
I think you're right, but I personally think that would get phased out kind of like smoking, right? You have people that still fight for the right to smoke, but nowadays, like seeing a kid under the age of 30 smoking a cigarette is much more rare than it used to be. Not because they're not illegal or because you can't do it, because you can. You still buy it. It's just that generationally the culture is adapting away from that lifestyle, and they're going to something else. They're vaping or just not smoking at all, right? So I think that potentially maybe that'll happen to where people are like, I don't want to be fat and gross.
Well,
I want to like stay active and stay fit and live long time. And
I still somehow, I get what you're saying, and I still somehow see it's highly likely in my mind that if you destroy this entire, just again, if it was like a freak thing, virtual reality, the whole platform is destroyed. People, just how they would interact in person with people would not feel right. You'd be used to, and I don't care what anybody says. I know some people would say, oh, but virtually you could be here and we could do all this together. When you are in person with people and can pick up on smells and other things and just things that I think are reality driven because they are reality. Well, at least you perceive them to be reality. I think there would be some huge missteps and pitfalls regular human interaction if they suddenly got thrown back into that mix, and they didn't have the gloves on or the visors on of the VR world. Because I think the reason why people like the VR world is because it gives them a facade, it gives them a shade, it gives them a character they can play, so to speak. And if you remove all of that, you have all these weird emotions and weird things that you just can't handle in person anymore. And I think that would still kind of cause everything to come crumbling down to a certain extent socially.
Honestly, I think you have that already happening.
Yeah, right? Well, that's true. I mean, you do in general. That's what I'm saying. It could be a bigger issue. But I don't know
what does it do to the mentally ill, right? There's already people that have a problem with reality now.
I'm all nothing.
They're just like, did you hear a voice? Yeah, I hear voices all the time. I just started programming a bunch in, so it all drowns itself out now. I can't tell which one's which. So I don't listen to any of them, and I just do my thing. So I don't know. There's a bunch of question marks, man. There's a bunch of potential and risk mitigation and things that are going to have to be considered. But I think overall, I do think it's a positive for what we can get out of it. Humans tend to fuck everything up, so we'll see. We'll see if we can fuck this up royally or not.
It is interesting though. Again, we're at the cusp here, right? We're at the entry point to a whole new, like, just brand new way of living. Like, just it's interesting because we're literally right here, and I think that's what struck me the most by this concept, right? Just the concept in general, because I don't want to keep it to Ready Player One. That was just a good example of what we're talking about.
I'll tell you this, yeah, and if any of you are trying to like grasp all of this, really just read the book Ready Player One. I would say read the book. If you can't read the book, you don't have time, or you feel like you don't have time, like, make more time, or just rent the movie.
There's really no excuse, because if you don't like reading, just listen to the audiobook. I mean, it's not a big deal.
It's narrated by Will Wheaton. It's fucking fantastic.
For all of us 80s kids, it's great. You know what I mean? So get in there.
That's right. I forgot what I was going to say when I was recommending everyone to read Ready Player One. So that's what Gin and Tonics do.
See what happens when you spend too much time.
I blame the Quentin.
You should absolutely.
It's all the Quentin's fault for sure.
100%. That's okay. It's totally okay. Don't even worry about it. Things are fine. We are moving forward, Bob. And you know what? You can just put on your headset and your goggles, and you can just escape from this nasty reality of forgetting what's going on.
I don't know. My reality is pretty sweet. I know some people have a shitty reality, but I'm not one of them.
Listen to this fucking guy over here, doing pretty well, isn't he? Excuse me.
Well,
that's not bad.
I think that's about all the time we really have to talk about the metaverse. I will say, I remember what I was going to say. I will say this. I fully intend on automating and taking the cost leveling approach to Facebook stock moving forward. So I think that should just be a weekly small purchase for Facebook, because, go ahead and start adding that to the basket of eggs.
You know what? I appreciate portfolio. I do appreciate what you did there, because you literally answered the question that I asked at the beginning of the show, which was very nice of you. Didn't leave me hanging.
It takes a while. It takes a while for me to get back to it.
You didn't give me blue balls, is all I'm saying. And that was very, very sweet of you. I appreciate it. No, I agree. I'm going to get that shit on, set it and forget it and see what happens. Because I think I'm not going to put my money on Zuckerberg, but I am going to go ahead and put my money on his company for a little while. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think he's surrounded himself by a bunch of good nerds that can get this done at this point. I think that's about all we're going to talk about the metaverse here. We don't have unlimited amount of time. I did want to hit on the Rittenhouse trial. It did end. Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all charges. And I want to point out that so was OJ. It doesn't mean that he didn't do anything wrong. It just means that, the prosecution didn't establish a case that was solid enough to break reasonable doubt, right? Because it's not about did you do it or not. It's is there a skosh of doubt that he might not have done it intentionally, right? Or that he feared for his life, or was there a reasonable doubt? And a reasonable doubt's a pretty wide scope. So as with all self-defense cases, this one's going to be hard to prosecute, and I think the prosecution kind of dropped the ball on it. Personally, I like that the court worked itself out, and I know a lot of people are upset with the verdict, but you can't be upset with the verdict. If this guy never faced trial, that would be upsetting, right? But he did face trial and he did fall to the system. If you don't like the system, vote for new judges in your town to make sure that your judge kind of represents the town like however you
Bob,
want.
vote for new judges. I was going to go out there and I was going to burn down the 7-Eleven across the street here because he's a motherfucker. I thought that would do it. I really did.
It might, but I don't think so.
Well, I'm going to keep my hopes up.
But beyond that, I'll say one more thing and I'll let you say your piece about this. That's, whether he did it or not, or you think, I mean, I'm a gun owner. I would say, you probably shouldn't take guns to start shit. And then when shit starts, start hitting people from the shit that you're, starting. I think that's probably a bad approach. And a lot of people I'm hearing is that, well, he's white, so he got off. Well, he shot white guys. This isn't like a total racial thing. I understand they're BLM supporters and all that, but I think it's more of an elite thing, which he kind of got from being a white guy, because there's alt-right groups that really stood behind him and supported him right away. I know he got over $500,000 of funds raised for his defense. And I've already verified and checked that out this morning. And so I know he did get a lot of contributions from some, less than reputable groups that did pay for his defense that you and I wouldn't just get. Just running in there or whatever. So, and definitely like a black kid probably wouldn't be getting support from, any alt-right group when there's a shooting, of a white kid, I would imagine. So there's a little bit of racial that leads to it, but overall, this is more of an example of how the rich, not necessarily the white, that the rich have a different court system than the poor. He was able to score money that gave him a much, much better defense team than he would have gotten from a public defender. And that dude earned his money and he got him off of his charges, much like OJ's team of fucking lawyers of Robert Kardashian and Johnny Cochran and company got him off of his charges. He was black, right? And it wasn't about being black or white. It's about being rich or poor. So I think there's a little bit to like, yeah, the white kid did get some backing that helped that a black kid might not have gotten, but inherently I'd like for people to step away from our judicial system as far as the racial inequality. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. Obviously a black kid's not going to get a fair shake in a super conservative white town with old school judges and all this. Probably not the same as a little white kid would get. I understand that. Not what I'm saying. And I know that exists. What I am saying that's much more prevalent in all the country, no matter where you live, is that money gets you much farther and much more of an opportunity to get off of your charges than if you were poor. That's it. That's my whole piece to this.
Well said, Bob. And I'll say a couple of things here, because I mean, you said a lot there in the sense of you summed up a lot of just what was obvious, in the sense that this is definitely a case of money typically will get better resources for whatever the job is. It's just the way it is right now. I don't think that's ever going to change in the short term at all. And this is a black and white, no pun intended, example of, if you've got a lot more resources financially in this part, regardless of what race you are, you're going to get the better outcome. I will say this though, and with all that being said, this to me, again, and we talked about this prior, is definitely not some kind of comparison to OJ Simpson with the type of crime, because we all know Kyle Rittenhouse is a young white punk bitch male, in the sense of, just look at the kid. I mean, he's a young kid. I'm not even talking shit like I can kick his ass or something like that. I'm just saying he looks like a little punk kid, right? Because he's a very young kid. And I still say, I don't feel extremely sorry for the people that were killed during this, meaning like in crying injustice at all, because when you see a crazy white kid, a little punk bitch with an AR-15, and you run up on him with a skateboard and try to assault him and you get shot and killed, I'm just saying.
You kind of had that coming, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. No, I get it. I wouldn't run up on a gunman either. I mean, unless he was like, about to shoot my family.
And that's the other thing is, say what you will, I won't even get into the weeds here about if it's right, left, or whatever. I honestly don't have a lot of feeling behind this, just because there's not a lot of overwhelming evidence that he did it maliciously or purposely to those people. And I think those people didn't have it. It's not like they had it coming to them, but they definitely didn't get themselves out of harm's way when there was a automatic rifle walking down the street, is all I'm saying. So it's one of those things where it's an example, cut and dry, of money getting the job done. You turn it the other way, the kid probably gets a lot more repercussions. But yeah, he's going to walk away, physically and not unscathed, in the sense where he's probably going to end up still going to an Ivy League school if he wants to. I'm just saying, that's what I think. That's what I think.
Yeah, and he'll probably get sued, from the families, and that'll probably come here in the news next. So we'll see how that plays out. But you're right. It's not like an instance like he was walking through a school and shooting people, and like the guy on the skateboard ran up to him and tried to like save a bunch of people's lives. He did hold a gun, but that's not illegal in the country to brandish a gun in a lot of places. So there was something about that. There's a bunch of talk going on. He was rubbing people the wrong way, and his approach, and it got heated, and things played out the way they played out. But at the core of this is kind of you have a right, unless the city or state says not to carry a weapon openly in a lot of the country, a lot. But there's something to say also about man, kids shouldn't have guns. It's just they can't even like remember to brush their teeth. They shouldn't remember the rules of engagement for unarmed civilians.
And I agree with you 100%. I will say this. I do appreciate the fact in the pictures that he's in, his finger is resting on like the trigger guard. He's actually practicing like rifle gun safety, like, just cruising down the street. However, I agree with you 100%. I think the bigger story here in my mind is, what is this kid's parents doing, dropping him off and letting him walk down the road in a hostile situation with an automatic weapon at the age of 17? You know what I mean? That to me is like, how is that good? I think there should probably be more repercussions and what the fuck with this guy's mom right now versus him. I'm just saying.
Be.
I mean, because he wasn't 18 when this happened, right? Correct me.
No, he's 17. Yeah.
All the more reason, like, hey, how did you let your kid put yourself in this situation to where he killed 3 people? Who cares if it's his fault or not? How did you put your kid in that situation? You know what I mean?
And I do think it's odd that there's no repercussion for the mothers, because it's like, oh, you drove him there.
Right?
Oh, so you like dropped him off like he was going to a movie with his friends with an AR.
Now we get into that conversation, and then all of a sudden that becomes a much more polarized, where it makes sense, right versus left conversation. Because why would a mother, again, you drive there, oh, you got to go take care of your country and shoot all these protesters down. Like, what's your thought process here, lady? What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Right. You want to protect the country and be a badass. Sign up, man.
Yeah.
Join the military. You can sign up at 17, I'm pretty sure, with your fucking parental consent.
Right.
Just fucking go do that thing. I mean, my nephew's fucking in the military. I mean, I'm all about that. If Daring wanted to go serve, I'd say go serve, man. Go do it. That's a totally respectable thing to do.
I'm sure we're not the only people doing this or what have you, but the reason why the spotlight is on what like this versus that is a little bit unsettling, in the sense is, I think they're focusing way too much on this trial as a racial thing, and it's really not as much as a responsibility issue. I mean,
yeah, no, 100%. And I just don't, I know that the guys were out there like defending like, BLM protest or whatever. And Rittenhouse probably has a questionable past, but all I'm saying is that.
Oh, I'm sure he's a little prick. I'm sure,
right.
I'm sure
he was out there with an AR. Of course he's a prick.
Well, you see what I'm saying? I'm sure you and I, if we were out there for any other reason and we're just in his, in his vicinity, right? I'm sure we both want to charge him and punch him in the face, take his gun, fucking like just hit him with the butt of the fucking rifle and just knock him on his ass. And like, but again, I get it. That's why I can't put a lot of blame on people charging and going after the kid either. I understand that too. It's tough, but he's definitely a little prick. That's all I'm saying.
And I can completely get that a couple of people that got shot, or the kid that hit him with the skateboard, really like looked at him as an active shooter. I get that. I get that you could perceive that, especially in today's climate. and how that could be a perception and all that. But in the end,
100%.
you have to verify your target, right? You have to verify that he's an active shooter. You can't just like approach someone with a gun, because that's a constitutional protected right that most people can have guns.
And honestly, too, the other thing that, again, I have to go back and forth here because this is how inconsistent my way of thinking about this whole scenario is why would somebody bring a gun to a simple peaceful protest? Well, there was plenty of examples when these protests during the summer of 2020 were not simple and peaceful either. So people were very uneasy, including yourself and myself, just like, I don't know, there's a lot of crazy shit going on in the country here with the pandemic. You got riots, and we're, got to make sure we're armed to the teeth and like protect our family. So there's that.
I'm not gonna lie.
Right? Seriously.
Shit, dude, just like last week, I was eyeballing an AR-15 that was on sale. It's
you told me about it. You told me about it as its potential candidacy as the present that you're getting yourself for Christmas time. If I remember correctly,
I might get an AR-15. I know that makes me a bastard, but I'm trying to like get it, but before the Dems take our guns away. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just starting shit.
Hey, no worries about that. You've already got some, so don't worry about it.
I want to get grandfathered in, man. It's like getting an unlimited data plan before they change it to a fucking pay-as-you-go plan.
No,
I just want to get grandfathered into that plan.
Love that.
Well, no, I did. I really didn't want to talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, but as a gun owner, and such a hot topic, I thought that we owed it to our stiffies to bring up, and we should at least lay down our thoughts on it so that people know where we stand on it. It's important, us being, public figures and all.
Well, I've always
huge fan base and following that
I've
we
always
lay down our opinions.
I've always thought of myself as somewhat of an inspiration, so to speak, a role model to kids out there, so I just try to stay on that track, stay the course. That's what I always say. So
you got to stay the course. It wouldn't be prudent.
Oh, Bob, you know what? I think we are going to go ahead and end it now. If you're okay with that, unless you got anything else you want to say.
No, I'm okay. I got to go watch the Steelers game.
Well, good on you. And again, sorry about the Cowboys. Thank you to everybody else that's not Bob for joining us once again for a great show. I hope you guys got something useful out of it, or at least a chuckle or two, or a stiff cocktail with us. But guys, hey, check us out on all the platforms. Patreon is rocking and rolling. We'll be back soon. Maybe not next week. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there, but we'll see you again soon. Take care.
See ya.